and it's fine. And he was watching my reaction to confirm whether or not that was my intention. And then the next, and so I, even in my journal, I can see that I was feeling like, man, I'm smarter than these people. I'm getting away with it. And then the next day, he took me aside and he said, if you are caught malingering, you will go to Fort Leavenworth. You will be arrested and sent to Fort Leavenworth. And that caught me off guard because I had never encountered someone who could see a step ahead of me. And it taught me that well, I'll tell you what I did, and then I'll tell you what I didn't do, what I should have done. What I did was, well, I'll tell you what I did on Sunday. Inspired by honesty, I tracked Colonel Evans down, that psychologist that I met in Iraq. I found his phone number. All I had was a name, Colonel Evans. And I just put all the pieces together. It sounds impossible, but I did it without regard. I did it knowing that it had to be done, not knowing why. And he wasn't expecting my phone call. He was driving in his car. And he said, hello? And I said, Colonel Evans? And he said, yes. And I said, my name's Duncan. We met 10 years ago in Iraq. You might remember me. The reason he might remember me is because, well, for a lot of reasons, but that event that I was in is a huge fucking event. April 4th, 2004. That was it was huge. And what I experienced was beyond a level of violence that most people, way more than most people ever experienced in the military. Even being other infantry soldiers. That level. I forget why I'm mentioning that. Well, anyway, that would make me memorable. And my youth, I was 19, and that I don't fit in with infantrymen, but the infantrymen loved me, you know, the ones that knew me and kind of owned me, and I was this oddity that they protected and understood better than I understood myself. So I told him what I did with the information he gave me. What I did when he told me that basically he saw me, he could see through me. And what I did was I was journaling. And the thing about the journal was it was keeping me sane because I could be honest with it. But the honesty that I was putting into that journal would be really detrimental to my needs if the staff at the combat stress clinic were to read it, you know, because my intentions were clear in my journal. And so that made me think, that inspired me to do what I did, which was to leave an unmade bunk with a journal on it. Not a real journal, you see, but a journal that was filled with information that is just absolutely unacceptable, you know, just that they would need to protect me from myself, basically. And I did so counting on, I knew that I couldn't anticipate Colonel Evans. So what I chose to do was anticipate that somebody that worked in combat stress, who cares about dealing with soldiers, one of the other people there, an officer or a private or a specialist, one of them would see that journal and immediately have a moral choice like, oh God, well, I can't read that. That would be a violation of his privacy. But they would think, well, I need to help this person. And I need to have access to his inner thoughts. It would be valuable. We could better help him. So I could just read the words, put it back, and just have the knowledge that he can't say out loud. And I counted on that, and that I don't know who read it or whatever, because the very nature of my plan was that it would never come back to me, because they couldn't bring it up to me because they violated my privacy to gain access to this information. And that paid off. And I explained that to Colonel Evans. And, you know, he got a huge laugh out of it. But what I came to understand about him was that if I had just told him the real issues that I was having with the war, he would have been in a position to help me. He's a wise man. And he is in a position of power in the army where he can make an exception. He can say, he could have helped me say no to Iraq, because I basically said no to Iraq. And I said no to Iraq, and what I should have said, and what I didn't understand, but it was the cause of all my turmoil, was that I knew the war was a lie. And I joined the war as a result of the danger that my father was in on September 11th at the Pentagon. And what that inspired me, I was a senior in high school, it inspired me to join the fucking infantry, you know? And this is before the war in Iraq started. But the position my dad was in at the Pentagon, he's working for the Joint Staff. And the culture of the military was such that they wanted to deal with the problem. They wanted to solve the solution that led to what happened on 9/11. And they approached it with that mentality. And they approached our administration, the Bush administration, with that mentality. But Rumsfeld just kept coming back with, I want to hear about Iraq. And they said, well, it has nothing to do about Iraq. I want to hear about Iraq. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Shinseki, was fired by the administration because the Army wouldn't operate under the terms of the narrative that that administration would accept. And the words that they're putting out there in and of themselves, they sound harmless enough. Like we're upset that they are lying, but not that upset. And I was upset to have the knowledge. I couldn't not know that the war was a lie. You see my position as an infantryman and how that could be disruptive to his ability to function? Are you still there?
Yeah. No, I understand.
Especially, and joining the military with the intentions that I did for virtue, and finding the military, and in it, they instill in us loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And these are important values to us in the military because we are a team. We rely on each other. We aren't exploiting one another at all. We're maximizing each other's strengths so as to overcome, so as to be able to improvise to the best of everyone's abilities in a coherent unit. And people that join the military out of high school, what they don't understand is that the United States does not have that element to their lives, that teamwork. That idea isn't useful to them. And virtue, then, isn't useful to them because of money. I don't think money's bad. I think money has a use. But when money is the reason that I am sent to war, and, well, they they overestimate the value of money and underestimate the value of the people who are operating under virtue that they count on, the people that are exploiting our virtue. They count on us to have our virtues and to operate that way. And what makes America strong as an entity, as a relevant part of the world, the international community, is her capacity for violence. Her capacity for violence isn't just about the weapons we have, it's our military. And our military is so successful because we value teamwork. So we think that money is the most powerful thing, but what actually makes us powerful is the maximization of the realization of our potential for teamwork, or that teamwork provides. And they are being irresponsible. And so was I, because while I knew the war was wrong, I wasn't that upset about it yet, because I didn't understand the damage that lies can do. But so basically, up until the violence, I could operate in the military with a liberal or conservative view. The conservative soldier is saying Bush isn't lying, and the liberals are saying Bush is lying. But I could still operate under those terms at that point. When I couldn't anymore, and when both of those points of view have to be thrown out the window, is when the terms is the point, is that exact moment where bullshit meets reality. And it falls directly on the infantry soldier. If I was a conservative soldier and I was choosing to believe that Bush was not lying, then I would have to disallow that the population was rising up and tearing us apart. The reason politicians are able to keep on doing it, and even I was able to keep on doing it, because they don't understand the damage that can be done. And psychologically too, the damage it does to that conservative soldier who doesn't know, often is undereducated, and doesn't have the tools to begin to reconcile what his president is saying and what he's dealing with. But that infantry soldier has to cut all that bullshit out, you understand, to survive. In order for me to survive, I had to accept what was happening around us. I had to deal with it. And it's unfair for old politicians' words, for a 19-year-old boy to be dealing with the consequences of an old politician's words. And they don't feel shame about it because they just don't understand. And do you know what I'm doing with that? What I've done? Sayer, are you aware what I'm doing with that information? Part of the reason I called Colonel Evans was that a philosophy teacher of mine of 6 years ago, who I haven't seen or heard of, out of the blue got a hold of me and wanted to talk to me about war and listen to what I have to say. And he came on Sunday, and I called Colonel Evans before his arrival, and he stayed for 5 hours. And he helped extract information from me, which I do need, because I'm not aware of what happened to me. Was so extreme, and the change in me was so fundamental, but I didn't understand it until now, that I came to know things and take them just for granted that other people find to be incredibly profound. And after I say them, I'm like, wow, that is something. And I enjoy thinking the thoughts. I enjoy a thought that is put together and adds up. Um, and he helped me see that, and a lot of people throughout my life have always been telling me that I'm special and this and that, and I've never been able to accept it. And because the problem with it is often, like, if it comes from a religious person, it sounds like this. They say, you're blessed, or God must have a plan for you. And inherent in that statement, and the problem I have with that, is that, okay, well, what does that mean for my buddy? What does that mean for Arciaga? He was not blessed. I'm somehow, and Arciaga's mother said this to me. And what she doesn't realize that she's saying is that her son was acceptable collateral damage for what I have become. But I wasn't seeing it on those terms. I'm seeing it as an atheist, which is, I don't like religion, and I don't like what religion does, and I don't like the word blessed because it's attached to religion and God. But what could be true is that there is definitely something that I have to offer to our country that I'm not responsible for. I don't take credit. I see myself as a vehicle for truths, and I just fundamentally solve problems without any regard for whether it's possible. Like, I do it because I don't know it's impossible. And what I did today, well, yesterday I contacted Senator Bernie Sanders'. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I contacted Bernie Sanders' office and explained to them my position and my problem with politicians and my need to do things on my own terms, because I do things differently than everybody else. But I offered to him that I can solve our country's problems on my terms, in my way. And I invoked my terms with him as an infantryman, as a combat veteran, as someone that, while he wasn't in favor of the war, he didn't stop it. 19-year-old Duncan stopped the war. You understand? I ended the war in Iraq for myself. It was left up to me. No one protected me. My leadership failed me. Not my immediate leadership, my sergeants and whatnot, who believe in the disciplines, the virtues. But my leadership failed me from the highest levels. Even the liberals are responsible because they didn't stop it because it was impossible. I stopped it. There was never any doubt that I could leave that situation. I was able to do it because my friends around me, my sergeants and my friends, they knew that for me it was a choice. And they gave me permission. And that was helpful to me. They protected me, my immediate leadership, because they're virtuous people and teamwork-oriented people. But every step of my leadership beyond that failed me, including my officers, because my officers were operating under that they have a duty to not question orders, even if they have reservations, even if the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is fired because he says that Iraq is not good. Every single one of them failed me. And the reason I am in a unique position is because I don't approach life the way anyone else does in our country, for the most part. I would say probably than anyone else in this country. Yes. I'm in a very unique position, you see. And my upbringing is such that I grew up all over the place. And the people that I have exposure to, that I've known since I was a child, are the likes of ambassadors and diplomats. And in other countries, the princes and princesses of those countries. And they all loved me on my terms. And I didn't understand this about myself because I wasn't able to be honest about myself until that experiment with Stacy. And when I called, I was operating under the assumption that lies were necessary to keep me alive. But when I called Colonel Evans, I discovered that I could have been honest with him. You know, I could have, he was in a leadership position that could have helped me. And what I learned is lies weren't necessary. It's honesty that is necessary. Lies helped me get out. They were a useful tactic, but they weren't the right way. And I have, from that, from finding that I don't need to lie, Sayer, I am incapable of it right now. I will not lie. I don't see any fucking reason to. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
And so what I did after I contacted Bernie Sanders, well, their terms were that if you want to talk to Senator Sanders, you know, leave your number and your mailing address and yada yada yada. And I told them no, Bernie's gonna call me. Bernie is what I sense in him, and I'm choosing to trust him. And I'm able to do that because I know that I could have trusted Colonel Evans. But I sense in Bernie Sanders, he's an independent, and he is really frustrated right now that no results are happening. And what he doesn't understand is because he's operating under the terms of liberal versus Republican, conservative. And what I've found with the special access to truth that I have and my connections all around the country are such that people who are Republican, people who are religious, people who are atheists, people who are liberal, that I've experienced in different locations and capacities in my life, all love me and value what I have to say, and at one point or another have said that, damn, Duncan, you really need to say something. And so what I've done is I started having discussions with, like, my buddy Ben. I started exploring things with him, and I came to, just through exploration, I came to give him a concept of God that fits with science. Because the problem I was addressing with Ben was the seemingly nothing we can do about the incompatibility between religion and science. And through his discussion, I was able to give him a new vision of his God that he is so excited about, that works for him as a Christian. So that I wouldn't have been able to say or think those thoughts without the problem that I needed to solve, and I chose Ben to solve it, to try to solve it. And the religious discussions we've had before have been on the terms of atheist versus religion, on those terms. But I'm doing it on my terms. I did the same thing and with a lot of different people, but with Republicans, with like someone like a Tea Party kind of person who I am personally connected to on Facebook, who's always, you know, perpetuating right-wing propaganda, I was able to take one of his right-wing propaganda things, and by not operating under the terms, by not being outraged as a liberal, by not operating under those terms, I was able to demonstrate what was valuable about this, that contribution. And anyway, basically, I've won him over to my terms, my way of doing things. And that was a fun exercise. Today, I was woken up. Bernie Sanders' office called me and woke me up, and I had a long chat with some woman, and I when she said who she was, I was like, "Why aren't you Bernie?" You know, because the terms that I offered were that Bernie's gonna talk to me. But you know, I am being a little flexible because so far I've been talking to people who know and love me, and that have tried to get me